Thanks everyone for joining us. I know people are still coming in. We hope that you found the panel with our partners, H2O and Liquid Space, informative. So today we're going to answer your questions live, share some exciting news that launches today, so you'll get to be the first to hear, and give you more details about the cooking class that you can win from Join. So I want to introduce the Join team. Carl May is the founder and CEO, and Travis, that you saw in the previous panel, is the Vice President of Customer Experience. And I'm going to be the host, your host, Rachel Walter, Senior Market Development Manager at Join. Before we get into questions, Travis, were there any key takeaways that you wanted to share with the audience, or anything you wanted to reiterate from your panel and partnership discussion with H2O and Liquid Space?
Yeah, definitely. I would say at a high level, I think the message that we're really trying to get across is that there's a huge opportunity for building owners and operators to really elevate trust with their occupiers and therefore their employees as well that are coming into the building. But it's not I think what they're realizing is it's not a single event. It's not just, hey, there's COVID, so we need to respond. And then once this is over, tenant engagement or amenities or technology, it doesn't matter anymore. We can go back to the way things were. And I think the reality is a lot of things, and you heard this in other sessions as well, a lot of these changes or digital transformation, if you will, that building owners are going through today, I think will have a lasting impact and will be something that will just be expected. So you talk about elevating health and safety. We heard Brian Koop and Ben Myers from BXP, a great partner of ours, that mentioned exactly that, where it wasn't, yes, we might stop doing temperature checks as an example at the lobby, but a lot of the technology from a health and safety perspective is here to stay. And the reality is all of that technology needs a solution like Join underneath it to not only power those additional technologies, but then also gather really interesting metrics, insights from that infrastructure that we're deploying as well. So I think those are some of the real key takeaways from my perspective.
Thanks, Travis. Carl, did you want to answer Michael's question?
Which one is Michael's question?
The question that you started to answer in the panel. Sorry, I'm working on my volume, so I'm trying to throw the mic to you. Can you talk about secure network technology?
Oh, yes, sure. Michael Shear, yes. Good. He and I have been communicating on LinkedIn right now. So, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the role of the network. I mean, conventionally we think about, in my background, I've got things like, here's the first cable modem sitting on my desk, and I got a bunch of other stuff. Conventionally we think about the network as a bunch of boxes that are connected then to an ISP. And the reality is that over time what's happened is you've got a number of very complex systems within the building. So just even on the owner or property manager side, complex systems that now rely 100% or have essential connectivity either to a cloud or to the public internet in order to reach resources away from the building. And ultimately what the conventional approach has been to combine both proprietary networks from traditional vendors, from your building management systems and so forth. I saw references early to BACnet and Modbus and so forth that are really reminiscent of, shall we say, late 1980s or 1990s networking protocols, and combining those with very modern systems, be they IoT or some of the new systems that have been rolled out. And so in our view, what the foundation of what Join does is provide this converged network by connecting a building or a collection of buildings to our network, to our cloud. And from there, what we do is all of the networking technology actually sits secured by us away from the building, so that from the perspective of exposure to cybersecurity risk and so forth, we move that away from the building so that it is not a target. And number two, we then provide all of the conventional cybersecurity features are provided by us actually in the cloud in our points of presence in all the markets in which we operate throughout the US and Canada. And so that's sort of the fundamental about what we do. That backbone or that converged network framework then becomes the vehicle into which all of these other systems can be connected and then simultaneously secured. And the benefit, of course, is that as you have people from outside or even your own organization, as they need to connect into those systems and access controls or make changes, they can actually do that, again, over service that we provide. We bundle into our network as a service, a virtual private network connection that people can take with them. They can keep it on their phones. They can keep it on a tablet, on a computer. And one of the things that we discovered at the beginning of the shelter-in-place orders in March is that many of the companies we were working with had not considered the situation where their employees had to work from home. And so we provided an instant solution for them to be able to give not only their employees, but also their partners the ability to connect securely into those systems via the network that we provided. So that's sort of the foundation. Where we started, the first application we deployed about a little over 2 years ago was to provide then IT as a service or network as a service to tenants, where our customers were providing essentially workplace as a service, and they needed to have an on-demand IT service. So that just happens to be one of the use cases or one of the services that we deliver over our network.
Thank you. Michael, if that answers your question, or if you have follow-up, can you send us a chat? And Chuck, let me know if that sounds okay. I'm going to see if we can answer a question from Dan Pitt and make it live. So bear with. Dan, are you there?
I can feel Dan's presence. I just don't hear it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess that did not work. Dan, you have to allow permissions. We've all found that out, right, Carl? So make sure that your browser allows permissions. Okay, so I will ask. Oh wait, we have a question from Irina.
Hello. What was the question?
Here's a question from that we had over chat. Do building owners feel like it's on them or only on employers to create the dynamics that bring people back to the office workplace? I know that Join has a unique perspective when it comes to office.
Yeah, I mean, I think what makes us a little bit different. So I just got to note that my input volume is too loud, so I'll sit back or something. So we have a somewhat different perspective because not only do we work with building owners and property managers that want to offer workplaces, we also work directly with occupiers. And so with enterprises. So we have a variety of enterprises that have essentially outsourced their remote office IT to us. And what has happened certainly since the pandemic is that the demand, and I heard it from the HQO team a couple of hours ago on their session, that after an initial decline in any activity in the market in March and April, there has in fact been an explosion from not only the owners and property managers, but all the occupiers, the enterprises, about, hey, we need to come up with different strategies here. Our view is actually that the owners and property managers, in order to both enhance their competitive position as well as to be responsive to the needs of enterprises. I mean, a lot of these enterprises are experiencing their own crises as they try to figure out how do they entice people back to the office? And actually, that goes to the heart of Travis's message about elevating trust. We certainly believe that that owners have a significant opportunity to step forward and distinguish themselves by providing alternative solutions for tenants. And it may not be their current tenants. It may actually be that they're able to attract interest from companies that previously were not their customers. So our view is that based on a lot of what we're hearing from the enterprises we work with, as well as from the owners, that is actually a pretty significant opportunity.
Yeah, and I would just add on that and say that in our conversations with enterprise customers especially, it sounds like there was sort of this period where, and maybe we're still in it a little bit, enterprises were expecting the building owners to do a little bit more or something, and maybe they're not necessarily getting all that they think they should be getting from a technology perspective. Yes, they see the signs and the sanitization stations, say that 10 times. But in addition to that, the technology, I think, has been lacking a little bit. And so you are seeing enterprises, I think, trying to figure this out on their own. And that's not to say that they wouldn't do more anyways in terms of figuring out what's right fit for them from a technology perspective. But I think there was a period, and still is, where they're waiting for building owners to kind of take a little bit more initiative as it pertains to technology around health and safety.
Great. We have another question from the audience. Do we know of any source of AI to alter building operations in real time?
Yeah, let me address that. So one of the things that has distinguished our approach to providing data back, which is actually part of our launch here, data back to both owners and occupiers, is that there's a lot of difference in value between the real-time data and delayed data. And consequently, obviously, with what artificial intelligence or decision support systems and whatnot, they really require, in order to provide a timely response to events, they need that data in real time. So I think that you are going to see an emergence of providers, of companies that do provide essentially decision support systems, we'll call them first and foremost, that are essentially built on AI platform, perhaps even generic AI platforms, that take the data that companies like Join provide in real time, integrate that and correlate that with other data, feed that back into operational systems. We have a couple of partnerships, one of which we've talked about here, in the HVAC management, energy management, and so forth, that are classic examples where, while they're not fully automated, they get us a long way in the direction of getting that particular getting to those sorts of systems.
Thanks. We have a question from John, who comes from one of our favorite companies to partner with, Goodwin. As older buildings are retrofit with new technologies, will they be formed by tenants? Will they be shared? How do you start that dialogue?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, there are lots of different ways for both covert and overt for costs to be shared. I think that the reality is that you've got a pretty interesting opportunity for companies that are all OpEx based like us. There's an opportunity for the owner to share certain costs through CAM charges and whatnot, that essentially reduce the CapEx involvement. I think that others are going to have that there are clearly going to be some needs. There's clearly going to be some need for burden sharing between the occupiers and the landlord, simply because a lot of the improvements that are being made are actually for the benefit of the occupier. And so a lot of what we're doing right now in working with enterprises is looking for ways to merge the value that we deliver to the enterprises and have that also benefit the total ecosystem of the building.
question from a favorite partner. Everyone is our favorite, but Mark is definitely has a special place in our heart. So Travis, if you could answer the question, can landlords land and expand using Join? Start small to land an individual flexible office client and then grow. And then that's a timely spot if Carl, afterwards, you can talk a little bit more about our initiative with Liquid Space.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. And Mark, thank you again for the time. We absolutely love Liquid Space. And I look forward to being on your podcast as well in the not too distant future. To answer your question,
if you haven't realized.
I would say that, yes, the land and expand is, to be honest with you, even pre-COVID was a huge value prop for Join. The idea is that the infrastructure, et cetera, can grow with those use cases. There's actually a perfect example. Another one of our partners, BXP, and their Flex product, which is just a fantastic flexible offering. The thesis there was, how do we attract maybe smaller businesses or the hub and spoke, if you will, so those spoke businesses where they can then grow into more of a traditional lease, and they proved that straight out of the gate, actually, with a flex tenant that had been there for probably about a year, and then they wanted to move to their own space. They were fortunate enough that a space was opening up, and this was in the Prudential Center in Boston. Beautiful property there. And they wanted to expand to the 22nd floor. And a little anecdote here, as they were actually getting onboarded, so this is us essentially getting them comfortable with the technology we've deployed. We show up and there was still plenty of construction happening. There was plumbing going on. There was building of furniture. The power in the particular conference room we were in was very shaky. But the network, the internet, et cetera, that connectivity was already there. And so as we're onboarding our customer here, she's furiously typing away at all the other vendors that had let her down. And so we basically measured that deployment in days rather than months, which would be traditional for a deployment like that. And so I think that land and expand is really powerful because you can come in on that ground floor, do things like converged networks, so building management systems, but then as all these use cases pop up, quickly be able to address them without having months of lead time, and obviously still through all that offering a really better solution for the tenants and the users of that space.
And Carl, can you talk a little bit about our new initiatives with Liquid Space before we answer?
Yeah, sure. Let me address it. We've got a few more questions coming in. So Liquid Space actually has been a thought leader in how, going back years now, and how to make office space much more easily consumable by individuals, by companies, and others. And so very recently, we've started an initiative with, or we're participating in an initiative with Liquid Space and supporting it to provide essentially a continuum of offerings from working from home to the long-term, the fixed office, and then of course the flexible options in the middle. And so I think that you'll see a lot more news about that coming from all of us, from both Liquid Space and Join over the next, both this week and next week and in the weeks to come. But we think this is very exciting, and frankly, we're now beginning to find owners and property managers that are coming to us looking for better ways to market their assets. And so we think that is actually a pretty essential element of how companies can collaborate to respond to the current situation.
Thanks. We have a question from Minta K, whom I think everybody knows from Goodwin. What should building owners be worried about in terms of cyber exposure with existing systems? Is there a risk of compromise or misuse? Should they be planning to invest to upgrade internet controls quickly? Any examples to make this concrete and clear to people what they should be worried about?
Yeah, I'll address that really, really quickly, and then I see an interesting one from Michael Beckerman. So to Minta's question, for a long time, as we've gone in and worked with owners, again, those who essentially operate the buildings, it has been rather surprising to find the breadth or depth even of cyber exposure. We know from statistics, 2019, there were somewhere between 350 and 400 million attacks on various systems inside of buildings, from elevator control systems, surveillance, access control, you name it. And as we go in, we find in many cases, as we begin to work with a new owner, that legacy systems, often it happens when they just bought a new building, that the previous owner did nothing to secure access to those systems. And so cyber risk is, I think, a much, much bigger, as we've learned from a number of our partners, it is typically a board level issue right now, because the downside risk of having an elevator system compromised, or having your systems compromised, your HVAC systems or environmental control systems, is very significant. And so consequently, we are one of the things that we initially focused on a little over a year ago was providing those services directly to owners to simplify that sort of those sorts of offerings. Because when you control the network, when you control the doors, if you will, the virtual doors into the building, we're really the ones that can also keep out can keep out certainly the bad guys, but also ensure that the good guys are really getting access only when they're really supposed to have that access.
And can you take Michael Beckerman's question?
Sure. So Michael Beckerman asks, many of the most successful tech companies have actually attributed their success to this type of feedback, to essentially close collaboration with critical insights that we get from product and service. What have you learned from working so closely with Jim Whalen and the team at Boston Properties? How have they helped you evolve the product at Join? I think that it is unusual actually to find companies that have technology leaders like Jim that are super forward-looking. Not only are they focused on the near-term issues that they have to face, but then also are looking at what are the long-term concerns that they need to address, and then overlay with that business, social issues such as how do we communicate this to our tenants? How do we deal with guests? How do we, looking at the many facets that they have to address? And Jim has actually been one of the ones that has pushed us hard to expand between our initial offering, which was let's just provide IT as a service to tenants, to, hey, you guys can also simplify a number of other functions. Hey, there's also the analytics. Tell us who's using our building and when in real time, so we don't have any delays. And then there are a number of other use cases that he's helped us really look at in terms of how do we look at the totality of a building and consider all of the different parties that interact with it, all of the particular stakeholders. And so that has been part of our evolution over the last a little over 2 years now.
Thanks.
And we thank him and his team for that.
Yes, definitely. And Michael Beckerman and for CREtech for having us. Yeah, Travis, if you could launch our slides. Today is a brand new initiative from Join, which we're launching here at CREtech. So please stay a little bit longer for our session so we can run through this, but I'll also be sending out, and Travis, I think you can go to the next slide, the link, so that way you can download more information to get more detailed information about the things that Carl's going to speak about right now.
Yeah, so I think I have somewhat limited time, so I'll run through this. So at a high level, what we're addressing here and have been, testing over the last 3 or 4 months is a series of tools that help not only the owners and property managers, but as it turns out, also the occupiers, as they begin to look at, how do we re-enter the office and how do we secure it? And as Travis said on the session prior to this, one of the key things that we heard over and over again is the need to elevate trust. How do we elevate trust? And so part of what we've done here is looked at, we believe, first of all, that technology can play a very positive role in driving the not only the relationship with other systems in the building, but then also with the tenants. And so what you'll see from us right now, what we're launching is number one, a number of analytics dashboards that are sort of the head of our let me just pull this up here. I guess I should probably, so everybody can see it. Can everybody see it now? Is it visible? Yeah, okay. So the idea is that number one, the technologies that elevate the trust inside the building. Number two, as we announced with Liquid Space, that provide optionality both to owners who want to look at different ways to attract tenants into their spaces, as well as to the occupiers that are looking for that optionality, looking for the opportunity to be able to de-densify their existing CBD offices and move out to third places, to new offices. And then finally, to provide all of the infrastructure, for instance, Minta's question about security, to carry forward all of the, not just the security elements, but now create a very healthful environment. Could one of you advance? Okay, great. So our view is that there are really these three big elements with regard to the technology. Number one is access. A lot of this is logistics. We're dealing with a lot of uncertainty right now, and we've partnered with other, including academic organizations, to help look at ways to make decisions in uncertainty. And so understand and improve flow into and out of a building. How do we, you've heard this from others today, but how can we simplify that? We created an app called UpNext, which provides a vehicle for owners and property managers to communicate with their tenants and let them know, hey, if you're going to come back to a high-rise building, we can help simplify that return, as well as integration with touchless entry systems. The second is, of course, tracing. So a lot of the owners that we began speaking to back in, let's say, April and May, came to us and said, we are going to start introducing cameras to take temperatures. How can we simplify the integration of those? How do we make sure that we don't fall afoul of, as you said, in the third column, compliance? And so what we did is we spent a lot of time thinking through not just the physical connection. How do you hook up a camera? It's pretty easy. The much trickier thing is how we've dealt with capturing this data, writing it to a data lake in a compliant fashion that doesn't fall afoul of rules, and then coming up with a policy that the owner can share with the tenant, with the actual occupier, to make sure that they're part of that whole process. So pulling all of that together into one application suite that brings together really the owner and operator, the paying tenant, as well as the tenant's employees and contractors. Next.
And we're running out of time. Carl, so I might.
Sure. I can hear you. Yeah. So let's just go to actually we can go to the next one. And so there are really two key elements here. One is providing the dashboards to the owner to manage and maintain occupancy and utilization, feedback data in real time into maintenance processes, understand how densely occupied a building is, be able to provide also, by the way, information to the occupier. This can actually be carried over to the enterprise. Next. Travis, can you get to the next one? And then, as I mentioned earlier, UpNext is the app that we developed that we're piloting starting in about a week. This provides a very simple means for the owner or property manager to communicate directly with the tenants to provide them with logistics. There's obviously a lot of room for expansion here. We have a number of our customers that are very aggressively providing us with input here, but we see this actually as yet another platform for us to extend our network all the way to the user's mobile device. And then I think, since we're out of time, and then finally I'll leave this to Rachel. We'll talk about our company culture of in these days of Zoom, how we share with our colleagues some place that we wish we were rather than sitting in our home office.
Yeah, and I will get to that in 1 second. We're gonna keep going, so we want to be careful of your time, and so if you have to go, please visit our booth. please chat us. I sent the link for the toolkit to download. But if you can stay longer, please stay on and we'll continue to talk about the new toolkit and answer your questions. But what Carl was talking about is that Join's culture is very much about traveling and connecting to the world, connecting people, whether it's connecting to the office. And so how do we stay connected? How do we feel like we can see people and we're seeing different parts of the world? So we wanted to do something a little bit fun as a prize for people coming to our booth and to spend time and to learn about the Join team and to do something fun with the team. And so if you sign up on our booth or send us a chat or an email, 30 people will win an interactive cooking class, and the chef is from Florence, Italy. It's handmade Sicilian pasta. And
a little north, a little south combined in one.
Yeah. He's in Florence. I don't know where he's from, but he will be cooking from, connecting with us from Florence. So if there are questions, especially, I know Carl went through that very quickly, but please continue to add questions on the side. Carl, I don't know if you wanted to have leave any more takeaways about the toolkit, or if Travis, if you wanted to add a little bit of your perspective or from what you're seeing with tenants.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, so much of this is really about elevating trust. But I think the main thing that, again, I want folks to leave with is we are not talking about in doing an application once or installing a technology once and that sort of be it. This is something that realistically what we're seeing is this toolkit is basically just an evolution of the platform that we already have. It's not something that is an entirely new set of infrastructure that we're deploying or anything along those lines. It's really utilizing that same core platform, but coming up with new applications that are realistically timely for today. And this happens to be the COVID toolkit that we're Reoccupy toolkit that you're seeing here. But the idea is that, again, we will continue to evolve and create additional applications as the next thing comes up, or the need to further engage, or the need to further provide new and great technology and experiences to your tenants and also to your staff within your building as well from an operations perspective.
Great points. Carl, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, so I think, going back to sort of tie together some of the many things we heard from questions from the audience, I think ultimately the idea of what Join is really doing is using our technology to connect buildings to the future, to where those new services are going to come from, secure them. One of the questions from Mint2K, from Goodwin, I think a very important one about security as we adopt more and more of these touchless technologies that are connected to the internet of the cloud. That's going to introduce more cyber risk, which is one of the things that we really focused on addressing. And so the idea is to make the adoption of those technologies much easier, securer, and of course, bring with it the performance that people expect. They don't want to have to, rescan and wait for a lookup to be let in the building. And so there are a number of things that we address by wrapping together those features into one coherent platform, which really is Join. And so with that, I don't have anything more. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to address them.
I think that was a great wrap up and great final words. Again, if anybody wants to chat Carl, Travis, you have their names on the side, and we'll be at the booth. So please contact us and we'll reach back out. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.